Good evening and welcome to Wednesday's Look North. Our top story tonight, a significant development in the race to save Doncaster Sheffield Airport from closure.
There certainly is a credible bidder on the table in front of Pierre, and there's several other conglomerates interested, but a credible bidder is there.
Tonight there are calls for the new Prime Minister to weigh in. Also on the programme, a month on from the introduction of Bradford's Clean Air Zone, we take a look at the initial results. Farewell to a cycling legend. Yorkshire's Brian Robinson, the first British rider to win a stage of the Tour de France, has died at the age of 91. And Leeds lad and Michelin-starred chef Marco Pierre White gives us his tips for some haute cuisine.
Tripe and onions, a la Yorkshire. Yeah, I should have talked to you in my Yorkshire accent, really, shouldn't I, love?
And it's been very mild today, with temperatures reaching the high teens. More mild weather to come tomorrow, but a lot more cloud. I'll be back later with the very latest.
Hello, thank you for watching. In the last hour, there's been a significant development in the bid to save Doncaster Sheffield Airport. The Mayor of Doncaster, Ros Jones, says a buyer has now come forward. Well, let's cross to our reporter Tom Ingle with the very latest. Tom, what more do we know?
Phil, I'm sure you were a swot at school and you did your homework well before the deadline. Me, I would like to wait until the very hour it was due, and it certainly feels like we are in the 11th hour of the campaign to save Doncaster Sheffield Airport. It's been building steadily ever since the owners Peel Group said it wasn't viable. That was back in the summer. Just this weekend there was a big march to try and rally together to save the jobs, not only directly people employed at the airport, but the businesses downstream who might be affected. Imagine our surprise then at this late stage when Ros Jones, the Mayor of Doncaster, announced there was a deal on the table, a credible bidder in front of the owners Peel for them to consider, and what's more, she would guarantee that £7 million of funding from Doncaster Council and the mayoral authority to act as a bridging gap between now, through the due diligence process, and the point of sale. Oh, and all on top of that, she's written to the new Prime Minister.
I've written to the Prime Minister, is a Yorkshire MP, now the Prime Minister, asking him to step up where his predecessor didn't and actually show true levelling up by supporting us to get Peel to keep Doncaster Sheffield Airport open. There certainly is a credible bidder on the table in front of Peel, and there's several other conglomerates interested, but a credible bidder is there, and therefore I urge Peel to sit down and negotiate, and in the meantime stop trying to close down the airport, keep us a viable airport open.
So that's Ros Jones, Tom. What have the owners of the airport, the Peel Group, had to say about this?
Well, Phil, before any of the campaigners who do want to see the airport survive, and don't forget, it's supposed to close a week on Friday, or that's when we're expecting the last aircraft to land, you better hear this statement from the Peel Group, which came out this afternoon, which says they have met with every party the local authority has made an introduction to who have been willing to meet. Despite this, no credible proposal regarding the ownership of or addressing the lack of financial viability of Doncaster Sheffield Airport has yet been provided. In addition, the airport has received no approaches from any new airline to operate from the runway. So there you go. It seems to be completely contradictory to what Ros Jones said. Meanwhile, she has had a reply back from the Prime Minister, although not really from the Prime Minister, from the Department for Transport. They are encouraging Peel Group to work with local leaders to find a solution for the site which will benefit local people and the region's economy. New Prime Minister, same line from Downing Street.
Tom, thank you very much. Tom Ingle there reporting live from Doncaster. Next tonight, it's a month since the Clean Air Zone was introduced in the city of Bradford. There are early signs that pollution levels are beginning to drop, according to a leading health expert. Drivers of the worst polluting lorries, vans and taxis are now charged to enter Bradford city centre. The council introduced the zone because of illegal levels of harmful nitrogen dioxide in the air. Corinne Wheatley has the story.
This is the first clean air zone in the north of England, launched here in Bradford exactly 1 month ago. The aim was to tackle air pollution and its associated health risks. The most polluting vehicles, including taxis, buses and HGVs which don't meet emission standards, have to pay a daily fee to enter the zone. It's very early days, but researchers say air quality appears to be going in the right direction.
We're looking at the quality of air primarily. That's what we want to see change. And there's early indications, and that's already improving. We wouldn't expect it to happen just after a month, but it looks positive. And what's interesting, it was improving in some areas of the city in the run-up to the launch of the Clean Air Zone, because buses and taxis were converting to cleaner engines. That's what we wanted. We wanted to nudge better behaviour, and that seems to be happening.
Private cars and motorbikes never have to pay. The zone covers the centre of Bradford, the A650 corridor and Shipley. The onus is on drivers to know whether they've entered the zone or not, and critics say that's causing confusion.
People are asking me how do they find out if they've been in the zone? And unfortunately, there's no way of finding out. If you ring Bradford Council, we just say it's down to the driver. Bradford Council sent letters out a week before the CAS came live to people saying that they've hit the zone. So it's clearly there, it's the infrastructure to tell people that they've been in the zone.
Some businesses that oppose the scheme now say they're beginning to lose trade, as feared.
After being in business for 49 years and based in Bradford, we are struggling, we are losing customers hand over fist, and we don't know what the future holds, to be honest. And if we do get a chance, we will be moving out of Bradford, that's without a doubt.
These are some of the diesel vehicles that we have. We've been stuck with these basically.
Ashfaq says he hasn't sold a single diesel car since the zone was implemented because people have misunderstood the rules.
People tend to think that the Clean Air Zone means that they can't have a diesel vehicle full stop, not realising that that rule only applies to the commercial vehicles. The average person doesn't know how the law affects them.
Bradford Council says the Clean Air Zone is well signposted and there's been a major publicity campaign about it. And will drivers in the north get used to schemes like this? Manchester postponed its Clean Air Zone, but Sheffield's is due to start next year. In Bradford, air quality data and the impact on people's health will be closely monitored in the months and years to come. Corinne Wheatley, BBC Look North, Bradford.
You're watching Wednesday's Look North. Still to come on tonight's programme. Why the onset of winter and rising energy bills has seen a rise in work for chimney sweeps across our region. Next tonight, police in South Yorkshire are investigating after a new report revealed very serious abuse and neglect of children with disabilities at 3 residential special schools in Doncaster. Its findings have prompted calls for an urgent nationwide review of similar children's homes. Well, Abby Jola has been looking at the details of this. Abby, what more can you tell us?
Well, Phil, the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel looked at the experiences of 108 children and young adults. They were living at 3 privately provided homes in Doncaster run by the Hesley Group between January 2018 and March last year, with complaints going back to 2015. They've all now been moved to alternative care. The panel found
all of the local authorities have taken action to remove those children from the provisions and are in new placements, which is quality assured through local processes. So as far as I know, they are in safe placements.
The panel found residents were subjected to physical and emotional abuse from staff and other residents, excessive force and neglect, and medication was misused. They also found that staff had seriously breached sexual boundaries with each other and with children and young adults. South Yorkshire Police began a criminal investigation into the allegations in March last year.
I can't really go into the specifics, but it's a combination of physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, and also the maladministration of medicines as well that the children should have had whilst in these settings.
The Hesley Group, who ran the 3 homes, said they took swift action at the time to address concerns raised, including dismissing several staff, and they made the decision to deregister all homes. The Safeguarding Review Panel has requested local authorities undertake urgent action to review complaints and concerns in all special schools across the country, and this must be completed by the end of November.
Abby, thank you. Abby Jola there with that report. Now, with the soaring cost of gas and electricity, chimney sweeps in our region are reporting a big increase in the demand for their services as customers look at ways of cutting energy costs. More people are asking for their chimneys to be opened up or log burners to be installed. However, Government data shows wood burners can create more small particle pollution than road transport. I've been to see a chimney sweep at work in North Yorkshire. It's a profession that can trace its origins back to the 16th century. Katie Wiggins has been sweeping chimneys for the last 15 years. Starting as a sole trader, she now employs a team of 9 and says demand has never been so high.
The autumn and winter is always a really busy time for us chimney sweeps, but this year in particular, with the hike in energy bills, people are really turning towards using their wood burning stoves, their multi-fuel stoves or open fires. Lots of customers have said they're so grateful to have the stove over open fire as an alternative to the gas or oil.
For communities that don't have access to mains gas, the rapidly rising price of heating oil, bottled fuel and electricity means the wood burner is a more cost-effective form of heating the home.
Considering the increasing price in gas, and we're on bottled gas as well, which is even more expensive, we're really minimising our use as much as possible and using the wood burner as the primary heat source for the home, really.
At this small holding on a farm in North Yorkshire, they rely on heat from a fire and a stove. In winter, it can be 2 degrees lower than near the main road, just a few miles away.
This isn't just to look nice. This is something that is going to be used to keep us warm. It's going to be pretty much the main source of heating throughout the winter time.
What do you say to those who say, well, this only adds to the pollution problem?
I think what we do is we very much try and offset it in other ways. So absolutely, we try and make sure that we use wood which has been dried and seasoned properly. We think about our carbon footprint in other ways and our energy consumption and usage and reduce it as much as we can in other ways.
Do you know it's tradition to make a wish when you see the brush coming out of the chimney pot?
I will make a wish.
Yes.
Government data seen by Look North suggests wood burners make up 17% of small particle pollution, compared to road transport at 13%. Domestic wood burning increased by 35% between 2010 and 2020. But for those with little alternative when it comes to heating their homes this winter and energy costs going up, it seems the workload for chimney sweeps is unlikely to come down. Well, Professor Alison Tomlin is a specialist in combustion, air quality and renewable energy technologies at the University of Leeds. I asked her about the increasing popularity of wood burners and open fires and the impact on the environment.
I appreciate that people are facing quite difficult choices. Really, at the end of the day, we need to insulate our houses better so that whatever heat source we are using, that we're maintaining more of the heat within the house. But it surprises me a little bit that installing a wood-burning stove is actually proposed to be cheaper as an option, really, because they're actually quite expensive to install.
It's now 1 month since Bradford introduced a clean air zone for the city centre. The council wants to cut down on the number of pollutants in the air within the city by limiting certain vehicles. I suppose it's a paradox that the cost of living crisis is now driving people to burn more fossil fuel, isn't it? So how do we sort of square that circle, if you like?
The clean air zones in most cities are focused on traffic pollution, which historically has been the main source of the air pollutants that we see in cities, like nitrogen oxides and particles. But actually, wood burning now and domestic heating has taken over as the primary source.
Should there be more incentives, do you think, for people to invest in solar energy, perhaps ground source, air source pumps, which would heat their homes as an alternative to using fossil fuel?
Yes, I think coupled with a programme to better insulate our houses, then electrification using air source heat pumps is probably the way to go. Unfortunately, solar doesn't really help us with winter heating because we need heat at the times when we don't have a lot of energy from the sun. So electrification of heating is the way to decarbonise, and of course a heat pump is very clean locally because there's no pollution would come from the heat pump. Problem is that, of course, the installation costs. So people are going to need help, I think, in paying to install those kinds of technologies that we're looking to in the future.
Professor Alison Tomlin talking to me a little earlier on. OK, let's get some news in brief now. Hospital has been fined £200,000 at Sheffield Magistrates Court after 4 babies were exposed to serious risk when they were found to have non-accidental injuries which were not spotted. Rotherham NHS Foundation Trust, which runs Rotherham General Hospital, had been repeatedly warned by the Care Quality Commission about problems with its safeguarding training and other systemic deficiencies before the 4 youngsters' multiple admissions between January 2019 and February 2020. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is insisting he has a cast-iron commitment to levelling up in Yorkshire. The Richmond MP made the comments during the first Prime Minister's questions in response to a question from the Conservative MP for Shipley.
His 2 immediate predecessors made levelling up a key part of their agenda. Would he reaffirm his commitment to levelling up and start, as he means to go on, by approving the Levelling Up Fund bid for Bingley in my constituency?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his warm remarks. I can confirm he must be the only person, Mr. Speaker, who texted me to say that he did not want a job in the last 24 hours. But I can give him my cast-iron commitment to levelling up, particularly in Yorkshire, which he and I share.
OK, let's turn to sports now, and I'm afraid there's some sad news to chat about now with Oggy, who's here. And our viewers will be particularly sad tonight because this character was a familiar face and a friend to look north, Oggy.
Absolutely, to you and me both, Phil. There are some news stories that you don't particularly look forward to having to speak about. But tonight we are paying our respects to a British cycling icon, a pioneer made here in Yorkshire. Brian Robinson, the first British cyclist to win a stage of the Tour de France, has died at the age of 91. His family confirmed the sad news earlier today. Brian Robinson will be remembered and respected across the cycling world, both by professionals, past and present, but also by leisure cyclists who will continue to benefit from Brian's dedication to cycling in the future. For many people, Brian Robinson has been the face of cycling in Yorkshire. But he was only recognisable on our television screens decades after becoming the first ever British rider to win a stage of the Tour de France in 1958. Born in Ravensthorpe near Dewsbury, Robinson's 2 triumphs at Le Tour came in the days when riders fixed their own punctures and washed their own kit. His Olympic appearance for Great Britain in Helsinki and victory at the Dauphiné in 1961 helped establish Brian Robinson as a world elite rider of his generation. If you asked him, however, Robinson's proudest cycling achievements quite possibly came in retirement as a local ambassador for cycling infrastructure, here at the opening of Castleford's Greenway, just one of many examples of cycle paths he launched or helped maintain. He was also a patron of Spenborough charity Street Bikes, which reconditions and distributes used bicycles, culminating in him being awarded a British Empire Medal in the 2017 New Year's Honours List for services to charity and cycling.
The guys I was with a dozen guys, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to call you Brian anymore, we're going to call you Ben." so, you know, things like that are quite amusing, really. But I mean, seriously, it's a nice award, and at the end of a career, it's great, really.
Being one of the first to, you know, sort of complete the Tour de France, and then also winning 2 stages for Britain, basically, you know, is massive for the UK, but also for like predominantly Yorkshire, and just sort of setting that tone of, you know, producing, you know, great cyclists from Yorkshire.
Robinson's personality and passion for cycle sport came in useful for race organisers during Yorkshire's recent cycling boom. Brian Robinson was a persuasive force behind the region's successful bid to host the Tour de France's Grand Départ in 2014 and the resulting Tour de Yorkshire editions that followed. The joy of riding his own bicycle continued for Brian Robinson into his 80s. He even overcame a serious accident in Thornhill Lees in 2014 when he was knocked off his bike by a motorist and sustained a broken collarbone as his general health deteriorated in later life. After a period spent being cared for in a nursing home last year, Brian Robinson had returned to his family but was admitted on Monday to Pinderfields Hospital in Wakefield, where he died, aged 91.
A real gentleman. Oggy, you knew Brian well. What sort of reaction has there been from the cycling world?
Well, cycling world is the right way to ask it. When you look at what's been on social media throughout the course of the day, Phil, Latour, the owners of the Tour de France, no less, described him as a pioneer and trailblazer of British cycling who passed away today. They sent their respects. Ned Boulting, one of the best voices of cycling on the telly anywhere, describing Brian Robinson as a great man, a fierce competitor and a trailblazer, and also his kindness and his humour. Generally, cycling fans across the world, John Wilcoxon, for example, saying that without Brian Robinson, Britain's interest in the world's greatest race would have been very different, and that's very true, that it defined an era. And one of the most powerful cycling teams in the world, Ineos Grenadiers, saying that Brian was a man who blazed the trail for British cyclists at the Tour de France, a true legend of our sport. Legend, a very overused word in sports punditry, but that is definitely absolutely appropriate in this case. And needless to say, our thoughts go to Brian Robinson's family, his wife, and we thank them for sharing him with us quite a few times here on BBC Look North over the years. I'll try and lift our spirits a little bit by having a quick look at last night's football. It was a tough evening, though, I'm afraid, for some of our teams last night. Home defeats for Barnsley and Doncaster Rovers. Harrogate Town, they lost 3-1 at Walsall to leave Town 21st in League Two. But there was a bit better fare from Rotherham United and Bradford City, though they both had to settle for draws after being ahead for most of their matches. Rotherham United twice led at Coventry thanks to that goal from Cohen Bramall and this one from Connor Washington. That made it 2-1, but in injury time, Coventry were awarded a penalty, which they converted. 2-2, the final score. And a very similar story at Bradford City in League Two at home to Swindon. Bradford established a 1-0 lead after half an hour's play. Nice move this, finished off by Tyreek Wright. And that is how it stayed for quite a long time until injury time. Swindon got a penalty. City keeper Harry Lewis actually saved it, but Jeffcott got to the rebound first on 1-1. It finished a lively night, but not many victories to speak of for our teams.
No, sadly not. Oggy, thank you so much for that. And finally tonight, if you're looking for some culinary advice, who better to turn to than Marco Pierre White? He was arguably the first celebrity chef and was born in Leeds. Well, he's returned to his roots in Yorkshire and has been talking to Lakshmi Gopal ahead of his 3-day food and drink festival in Harrogate this weekend.
A Michelin-starred celebrity chef, 45 years in the industry. But Marco Pierre White has never forgotten where it started, in Yorkshire, at Hotel St George.
One day my father said in 78, Marco, you're not going to school today. You're going to go to Harrogate and look for work. And I arrived just down the road by the Cenotaph, by Betty's. And Trevor knocked on the door and said, Chef, there's a young man here to see you. Please send him in. And I got my job.
Before moving to London, he worked at the Box Tree in Ilkley.
Box Tree was a very romantic restaurant, and if it wasn't for Box Tree, I would never have become the man I became.
The lockdowns we had were a really difficult time for the industry. What effect do you think that's had?
Lockdown forced people to cook. So that's one of the positives within the whole of the pandemic, is that people fell in love with cooking. Lots of businesses went bust within the pandemic, but we've all reopened, and some of us we're just redoing what we did before.
He's also optimistic about how restaurants could fare in the cost of living crisis.
Just because everything has gone up, does that mean you have to put your prices up? Be clever. I think the future of dining out is making food delicious and affordable.
So now I'm going to do a quick fire round and ask you about some of your favourites. So what's your favourite place in Yorkshire?
I'd say Harewood. I used to spend my time on the estate. I wasn't allowed to be on the estate, but Harewood was where I spent my childhood.
Favourite food?
I love a bowl of pasta. I like a risotto. I like a bowl of something, like I like a stew. I like tripe a lot. I'm thinking of cooking tripe this week, actually. Tripe and onions, a la Yorkshire. Yeah, I should have talked to you in my Yorkshire accent, really, shouldn't I, love?
Where did that come from?
What, my Yorkshire accent? Well, I was in Yorkshire for 19 years of my life, love.
But you've hidden it all these years.
No, I haven't hidden it. It just disappeared.
Favourite drink?
Give me a pint of Timothy Taylor's any day of the week. I like a bit of Timothy Taylor's. From Keighley, River Air, good water.
What's your favourite regional news programme?
I suppose I've got to say Look North. I didn't even know Look North was still going until yesterday.
Oh, no.
No disrespect.
And he was doing so well until then. The food and drink festival he's hosting is at Harrogate this weekend. Lakshmi Gopal, BBC Look North, Harrogate.
I could do with a bit of fine dining myself, Keely. How's the weather?
Is that an invite, Bill? Thank you very much.
If you're up for it.
Moving swiftly on to the forecast. It's been very mild today. We got up to 19 degrees at Finningley, Doncaster, Robin Hood Airport. And tomorrow it is going to be mild once again with very similar temperatures predicted. But there will be a lot more cloud around. There'll also be some rain at times, particularly through the course of the morning. And then through Friday morning, a band of rain with squally winds will push through. It'll brighten up to the west of that with some sunshine through Friday, but it remains changeable through the weekend with further bands of rain affecting us at times. But there'll also be some sunny spells to come. A lot of uncertainty in the timings at the weekend, so keep tuned on that one. We've had one or two showers. They've been heavy as well through today. We've also had some decent spells of sunshine, and any showers will ease away this evening. It'll be fine overnight with long, clear spells. It will remain blustery overnight, and I think towards the end of the night, more clouds spreading up from the south. There'll be some showery rain spreading northwards as well, and temperatures will fall back to around 9 or 10 degrees. 10 is 50 Fahrenheit. Let's have a quick look at those high water times then. In Bridlington at 4 minutes past 6, and in Scarborough at 5:47. So we'll start the day tomorrow with a lot of cloud, that cloud continuing to push north with some showery rain in places through the morning and into the early part of the afternoon, but brightening up nicely from the south with sunny spells pushing northwards through the course of the afternoon. It won't be as windy as today, but it will still be breezy. And once again, temperatures could reach the high teens, which is quite a few degrees above average for the time of year. We should be around about 13 degrees. 18 is 64 Fahrenheit. Looking further ahead into Friday, through the course of Friday morning, wind and rain will spread eastwards. There'll be some squally winds at times and potentially some heavy rain, but it will move through quite quickly and it should brighten up through the course of the afternoon. And then on Saturday and Sunday, it remains changeable. Some wet and windy weather at times and temperatures still a little above average for the time of year, Phil.
Thank you, Keely. I think I've got leek and potato soup tonight.
Oh, very fancy. Thank you very much.
That's fine dining. But of course, if you're up for paying, then that's as far as we go. Good night.
I quite fancy leek and potato soup, right?